Okay, I see Mensa asked me to talk about the link back to the British geopolitics, if you will. And I think that's a very good question because when the Cray twins were put in jail for life in 1969, they controlled organized crime in London. And they had international connections, including, I believe, with the Bananas in New York or perhaps New Rochelle. And they did travel the world, they traveled quite extensively. And they weren't stupid people. They were very dangerous. They created a lot of fear.
Are you talking about me or the twins?
The Cray twins.
Oh, okay, good. It only takes one of me. It took two of them over to you.
And they decided a very good place to hide the planners for organized crime was in the prison system. So they corrupted Her Majesty's prison system quite effectively by smuggling children into the jail to entertain the prisoners, by seducing the guards and the prison officers in their homes and threatening their families. And I would say by the created a criminal organization with a global reach, including into the prison systems or the Bureau of Prisons in the United States, which fell under the basilisk eye, if that's the right word, of your bewitching sister.
I don't think she's very bewitching. I think she's just a witch, but go ahead.
Well, she's a lot more than that. And she picked up on this tagging system of prisoners so that prisoners could be moved out in and out of the prison system. And when they were out of the system, either by transferring the tag to a brother or a sister, it would give a nearly perfect alibi for the prisoners to fly around the world and commit mayhem, sabotage, assassination, etc., etc. And I think that's effectively what we've proven in the case of JonBenet Ramsey. Always the weakness for the British crime groups and, let's say, the New Rochelle crime groups, let's be specific geographically, is the danger of wiretapping. And the British, being particularly efficient at hoovering up patents, made an amazing discovery that the US Navy Research Lab had come up with a system that allowed secure government to government communications with very great difficulty for anyone to intercept them, and that's called the onion router. So Hillary Clinton, who's a patent lawyer, and her counterparts in the United Kingdom, specifically Serco, because Serco runs the United States Patent Office, hit on the great idea of why don't we patent the onion router, which is used by the United States Navy for military operations abroad, and actually make it very difficult for the United States Navy to continue to use it. Meanwhile, we transferred the custody of the onion router into the hands of organized crime groups, and we can move drugs and children and weapons around the world with impunity. And that's exactly what they did. And in creating Base One Technologies in New Rochelle in 1994, they handed off the responsibility of integrating onion router communications with organizations like the Federal Aviation Administration. And the PENREN, or Pentagon Renovation Project, operated by the United States of Defense, Department of Defense, with the British company AMEC. So by 2001, crime organizations or criminal groups were actually inside the FAA big time. Now, specifically through the network of FAA contract towers run by Serco, of course. So Serco was in a position to actually route a command signal through to a passenger aircraft, take over the autopilot, and fly it into a target and impute the attack to pilot error or one of these members of this obscure group known as Al-Qaeda. The only problem with the word Al-Qaeda in Arabic is it stands for Base One Technologies. Well, not the technology part. So brilliantly, these people built a database of people who could serve as patsies during attacks on civilian aircraft that takes us right through 911 to the hijacking of Germanwings 9525. Now, as we know, Phil, maybe you'd like to comment on that, there were a couple of Mirage fighters in the vicinity of 9525 before it started its journey into the mountainside. Is that correct?
I think there were four. There was also an Italian fighter across the Italy border. There was a Sukhoi fighter above 50,000 feet, and there was at least one United States Air Force aircraft in the vicinity participating in some form of an exercise. And in a rare mistake, a week ago or so, I said something about Bern, B-E-R-N, but actually it's CERN, C-E-R-N. And CERN, I believe, is in Switzerland, and they have some type of a device that might be called a HADL. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of different devices that were deployed on the 24th of March, any one of which, but only one of which, could have caused Germanwings 9525 to blow up before it hit the ground. And if anybody out there, no matter who you are, has a good reason to believe that the aircraft did not blow up before hitting the ground, please contact me privately or publicly at fieldmcc@yahoo.com. That's fieldmcc@yahoo.com. And for those of you who were hanging with me when I was temporarily separated from Yahoo, I'm back on yahoo.com. And so the McConnell Field at Gmail will still be monitored occasionally, but it's not in use. So, David, did I answer your question? I can't remember if you had a question or if you just said you had to take a break. But anyway, over to you.
You said there were four Mirages in the vicinity of the aircraft and one fighter jet in Italian airspace. Is that correct?
And a Russian above 50,000 feet, that was a Sukhoi, an Air Force aircraft which may have had a laser igniter. And then CERN, Switzerland, I think, CERN is in Switzerland, I think. What I'm saying is they had all sorts of weapons that could have discretion to try to solve this. I would look at the ground track of the geometry of the two sets total of four Mirage aircraft, because I think the first two did a horizontal turn, overtaking the Airbus and got a visual ID. What visual means is using an eyeball instead of technology. They would have identified it as Germanwings, and they would have identified it as an A320, and they would have known it's on a direct course for the Lac Sierra Pocon reservoir, which has 16 hydroelectric plants and a whole lot of water, which would be useful if it was contained, but it would be destructive if it was leaked. And I believe the apparent threat of the track of Germanwings 9525 was directly towards the midpoint, both laterally and horizontally, of the dam. And who knows what might have been in the cargo hold of Germanwings 9525. The only people I know that would know that are whoever shut the cargo. David, important. I'll make a note in the chat room and interrupt you.
Okay, well, I think those four Mirages, Field, are a component in relaying the onion router message into the autopilot of the Airbus 320 of Germanwings 9525. And the way this system works, it's opportunistic. So there's constant checking to see which route gets the signal most accurately to the responder machine, which, let's say, for the sake of argument, is the autopilot of 9525. And stations, it's encrypted with the address of the next after the onion ring is removed. Now, I don't pretend to understand the complexity of that, but I don't need to. All I'm saying is that you can bounce, 10, 15, or 20 relay systems, including the Air Force Space Command system. And so it's almost impossible for anyone along that route to intercept it. And that solves the problem of organized crime and wiretaps. But what, of course, and I think you invented a technology, did you say that you had a sniffer machine that you developed in your tour with Screwfay and MIT? What was it, that machine that you had?
It was called the Standard Naval Intelligence Profiler Human, SNIPH. And so sometimes either our technology or our dogs, who are equipped with a sniffer discriminator, they could tell if somebody were nervous. For instance, when we went to MIT, Noam Chomsky and the disgraced whatever he was, the guy that was, and he is a disgrace to anyone he meets. He once helped Bill Clinton with treason, and he thought that he'd get away with it because nobody's going to touch the Clintons. Well, I got one word to say to Hillary and Bill Clinton. And James Morrison, who you know as Jim Morrison, whose father was the captain of the Bonhomme Richard, which Navy people like myself, let's just see if what's his name is here. NWAI. He's not here today. I wonder if Bucky's here. Bucky's not here. I wonder if Scott's here. I'm looking for people that have Scott's not here. I've been looking for people that have a relationship to the Navy because anyone in the Navy worth his salt would know that the aircraft carrier called the Bonhomme Richard was really known as the Bonnie Dick. And we actually have an agent who, one of the words I just said, but that party became Agent Dice instead, DICE instead of DIC, fill in the blank. So David, Sniffer was the U.S. Navy intelligence olfactory discriminator, Oscar Delta. And of course, up to our exposing that in 2008 and 2009, no technology. But of course, that's what we do. We are bean spillers. And at one point, we even had an agent bean spiller. And if anybody wants to prove that, just do the standard Able Danger Google search for any term we've ever written about. And that is, first you put in chips, then you put in Hamish, Hamish, then you put in pastel, then you put in IOC, and then you put in the search term, bean spiller. Not only will you see that we had an agent named Bean Spiller, but you'll see that her clipper device was a spelunking helmet, and I can't give you her pastel code security protocols. And number two is I can't remember her color because she's been out of our world for, I guess, close to a year and a half to 2 years, which is sort of a shame, but people come and people go, and people like Mensa Max and Ginger Cookie and Sherlock and myself and David have been here from day one. And I don't know if Arizona Sunset's here. Yep, she is. There's another day oneer, and right above her are two from Brighton, and the other being Alpha Kilo from Weinheim, Germany, which is just north of Heidelberg. And one has a castle and the other has a castle. And then one has really good beer and one has really good wine. And when I was between Heidelberg and Weinheim, between beer and wine, I felt like I was torn between two lovers, feeling like a fool. A Warren song called The Right Time of the Night, as if there's any wrong time of the night. David, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So I'm just looking at that onion router pattern drawing, and it has on the left an initiator machine, and on the right it has a responder machine. And then arbitrarily, provided the relay points are authorized, a large number of relays can be used to conceal the original source of the information and the final destination. So I believe in cryptography terms, it's called rubber hose proof. That is, if you find someone listening along the onion router to what goes to the next shell, merely shows the next destination, and it's only the final destination that gets through to the core message. So what's interesting to speculate, of course, once we've established that the responder machine are the autopilots of all of the planes that have crashed since, well, I don't know, what would be the first one in the series? Might even be Pan Am 103, because as far as I know, something like the onion router technology was in use for years by the United States Navy, even though it was sort of conceived in the 1998, that some smartass decided they were going to patent it and actually deprive the United States Navy of the benefits of sniffing, because what the onion router could do is it was like a sort of parallel to the wiretap until Hillary got her hands on it. But it looks like the initiated machine is very interesting, Phil. It's highly probable that it was set up in 1998 by Base One Technologies at the Clinton home in Chappaqua. Is that the correct pronunciation?
I was busy watching Barack Obama point at Michelle's kickstand. So could you spell the word and I'll tell you how to pronounce it?
I think it's CHAPAQUA or something like that.
Is that where the Clintons live?
Yep.
I don't know how to pronounce it, and I don't have time for the Clintons because I think they're living on borrowed time at this point. And I think on Monday, oh, let me explain something to everyone that was involved in my trip to Axel, Ralph. Ralph is the guy who did the interview prior to Axel's interview. Ralph T. Niemeyer. Okay, now let's see how many people know comedy history regarding movies. There was a wonderful comedy movie made in the last 35 years that had a jerk named Niemeyer. Anybody remember? Anyway, Ralph T. Niemeyer is our German friend who has interviewed many heads of states, including Cesar Chavez and Vladimir Putin. I'd love nothing more than to go to Moscow sometime when he goes. And maybe I will, maybe I won't. I offered to go in 2012. I offered, and I even had reservations at a hotel at a mere $800 a night, choke, and a first class round trip from Minneapolis to JFK to Moscow. I think the round trip was under first class ticket, so I guess I'd rather take airplane rides and sleep in hotels, with the exception of 2 nights ago when I slept in the Frankfurt terminal because there were no hotels. But that's okay. I had a mission, and the mission is the mission to England and Germany going to generate. Well, it looks like it's got a couple of CEOs pretty nervous as they were looking rather paranoid when they marched into the Cologne Chapel today to show how much they don't care about the 150 dead people. And you heard me correctly, I say they don't care because the CEO of Germanwings, the CEO of Lufthansa, as well as Merkel and Hollande. I can't pronounce the president of France's name, Hollande, but that's okay. But David, when we're talking about how we've been doing things with Navy intelligence going back to, I hope I didn't slip and say 1967. If I did slip, that would be rather accurate. But no, I don't think I slipped and said 1967. I think I might have said something about, let's see, September of 2009, when I met a Navy intelligence person, and Mercury Man and I don't communicate directly and never have, but it's easy to get things to people. For instance, if I wanted to get something to Vladimir Putin, I would just send an email to Delta Echo Fox Alpha Tango Tango Romeo Uniform at msn.com. That's the Air Force, Russian Air Force Defense Attaché on Tunlaw Road in Washington, D.C. I did yesterday and today to the Defense Attaché. You can bet your bottom dollar that it goes to Brother Vladimir and GRU and KGB, not to mention IUD and BFD. David, over to you.
Yeah, and I think what they have to worry about, Field, and sometimes I worry, is that your sniffer system, they don't know in whose hands it sits and whose control, and they don't know whether that sits within or outside the onion router system developed by the United States Navy Research Lab. So they don't know if Able Danger, which operates in a cloud-centric crime scene investigation mode, is listening to all of their conversations in the same way, presumably, that the FBI atop the Sheraton Hotel was listening to the New Rochelle crime groups during the period when Louis Frey and Giuliani were preparing their prosecution for the Banana crime family. So the second paragraph of today's post, McConnell claims that Serco, operator of the United States National Visa Center, thanks to your sister Christine Marcy, and its protege, Base One, converted the US Naval Research Lab's Onion router into a honeypot patent thicket where devices accessible to the State Department and Serco's Black Hand navigators could be used to silence people such as Fuddy and scan a document conversion of the Obama birth certificate. So, for example, the conspiracy to place a non-American citizen in the White House, I think, Field, was developed online using the Onion router to conceal the communications from the white hats in the United States government, which would include Chick Burlingham, your US Naval Academy classmate, and John O'Neill, the FBI officer who went to Aden to hunt down the people who killed the people on the USS Cole. So with the Onion router, of course, it doesn't leave a paper trail. But those aren't the paper trails that Able Danger specializes in. We specialize in tracking down taint through your sniffer device. Because if I understand correctly, Field, and whether you made that analysis or you support that analysis, I believe you can tell, or a really good sniffer dog can tell from the urine smell of a person whether they're congenital liars, or am I stretching the long bow over to you?
I'm not sure if you're stretching a long bow, but I think it's a colorful. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say anything about what I think. If Mensa Max and Ginger Cookie give me permission to think, I will say that I think stretching a long bow is a colorful piece of vernacular. I'm just putting up a partial thought here, and then I'll complete it. This is taint wash. Thank you, Ginger. She jumped on your taint comment right away, and of course, what we're talking about is Navy intelligence Operation Taint, TAINT, which is um, tactical analysis involving naval treason. And notice for the record, I didn't say anything about J.M. Cohen, Cohen, who lives in Norfolk, Virginia. Actually, probably Virginia Beach, now that I think about it. Of course, I was in Virginia Beach in September of 2014. And if I had left a bottle of Dr. Cotter's taint wash in the mailbox, and if anybody wants to know the mailbox or the address of Admiral J.M. Cohen, Annapolis 69, I can provide you with that privately. I would never be so um, irresponsible as to put out his address, phone number, or other details such as his email address in this public forum, because I know Judge Jennifer McKinnon up in Canada might get confused and think I was exposing Mary Elizabeth Harriman, who is a descendant of the Harriman fortune in Chicago. And of course, it was Mary Elizabeth's misfortune to be introduced the Canadian stallion. Some people think his name is Russell Williams, but of course his real name is a little bit tainted. Pardon any reference to Hillary's foul taint. Which reminds me, if anybody wants to see a good cartoon that's about 6 minutes long, you go to YouTube and put in Hillary's foul, Foul, taint, and you'll be regaled with a video made by somebody who recently returned from Germany and England. I wanted to apologize. In fact, I think I put this up already. Yes. I forgot to finish my thought. It says I sent an email to Axelroth, Liliana, Denise, VP, Doug M, Afterburner, Joyce, requesting any images from last week. And the reason I ask is I had about 1,000 emails in my Yahoo account when I opened it up last night after I got home. And the reason I couldn't open it up in England or in Germany, great security. They don't recognize me. Here's what I think of them. When I drove into the Minneapolis airport on Thursday of last week to go first to London and then to Frankfurt, I saw a sign that says, it says, if you see something, say something, dial 911. Well, on December 10th of 2000, through a whole bunch of different goons in Washington, including J.M. Cohen, who was at number two at Department of Homeland Security before the ugliest lesbian in America took over. Notice I made no reference to the ugliest lesbian's name. I don't want to get accused of being anti-lesbian. Um, because my sister, might send her laundry bag at me and hold that I keep on me, even when I'm naked in the shower, which is exactly why I don't disrobe before I go in the shower. So, David, do you think anybody in Washington could make sense of what I've said for the last 3 minutes? If David doesn't respond soon, somebody dial 911 and
I think your run-on sentences are mind paralyzing, but I mean, to be able to do that consistently, it's worthy of a round of applause.
oh, I thank you. Okay, enough from my adoring fans. Over to you, David.
Okay, so the next paragraph in the post, McConnell notes Serco, the world's largest air traffic controller, filed a Tor, that's the Onion router patent application in 1998. That was the year the Clintons bought their house in Chappaqua. I think I got that pronunciation. Thanks for the chat room. And processed a 2 millionth patent application for the US Patent and Trademark Office in March 2013, giving its Base One protege and Black Hand navigators ample opportunities to hack Huerta's chain of command, crash planes, kill passengers, and remove evidence from crime scenes. Now, I know in this field that quite often there are some people out there on the internet, you probably know their names, who say not all crashes are associated with Field's theory. And of course, it's not your theory. It's not anyone's theory. It's just a simple statement of fact that the Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot is behind these crashes. But I think you and I both agree it's one component. I think you have a document, well, it's 66 pages long, is that correct, about patents associated with the autopilot? Over to you.
Yes, I do. It's 66 pages. It's a compiled history of the Honeywell and then later the Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot. They started the plan in 1953. If anybody wants to put up something that will dazzle everybody in the chat room except myself, just Google Mike Bravo MB47 plus 1953 plus remote plus bomb, and you'll see that in 1953, the United States Air Force had a Mike Bravo 47. And David, just to confuse our friends in Washington, D.C., so let me slow down so I don't outpace their listening skills. To those of you in the intelligence community in Washington, I'm talking about Mike Bravo 47, a droned B-47 that was used in 1953. If I didn't have to slow down for the intelligence people, I would also speak very quickly and say that yesterday when I left the airport at Frankfurt, the gate I left from was Bravo 47. Now, some people out there are doubting me because I speak so fast, so let me slow it down as if I just took a doggy downer and say, if you do a search for the terminal at Frankfurt, you will certainly find a gate Bravo 47 that is suitable for narrow body aircraft. And that's where I jumped on Lufthansa Flight 902 for London Heathrow yesterday. And when I left London Heathrow yesterday, I was in Terminal 4, and I believe, and so whether I talk real fast like this or whether I slow it down for the Intel communities, the truth is the truth. And the truth is going to be rather hard to swallow for the parties that tried to drive a wedge between Germany and France with Germanwings 9525 And I've already spoken with Financial Times, some former Serco people, which were quite helpful. Who knows who I might bump into if I go to Pakistan or Russia, as I've been invited to do over the last 36 hours. David, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Phil. And so I believe that you use the Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot because it's quite an iconic invention that has been patented in Canada by Boeing. Very interestingly, so it falls under Crown rights rules, and I'll come to that. There's an even more iconic, at least at the geophysical level or geospatial level, a component of the autopilot, which is the quartz rate sensor or gyro chip developed by or invented by BEI Industries of Little Rock, Arkansas, and brokered by patent lawyer into the uninterruptible autopilot. And the uninterruptible autopilot, or the control systems thereof, have been brokered by Hillary Clinton into this extraordinary onion router patent thicket. So I put up a picture in the chat field. It's entitled Mobile Patent Suits, and red shows someone suing someone else, blue shows suing each other, and green shows licensed technology to company. And you've got companies like, well, let's just take an example. Somewhere here you've got RIM, Research in Motion. Research in Motion is a company based in Ottawa. It makes the BlackBerry. So Americans, listen up. Your president and your former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and many senior bureaucrats coming under the bailiwick of Phil's sister, Christine Marcy, and the senior executive service, are avid users of their BlackBerries, which they believe to be secure. Bullshit. BlackBerry is not secure. It is monitored 24/7, 365 days a year by the people with custody of the onion router system. Now, when your ex or former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton opened up a server for the Secretary of the Department of State on her home computer in Chappaqua, there was no security whatsoever, and every man and his dog was able to follow what Hillary Clinton was communicating as the Secretary of State to one or more of the 100 countries she visited during her 4-year term. And there is a direct connection between the havoc she wreaked upon those countries, including Libya and Cairo, Egypt, and Ukraine, and the failure of this woman to take the most basic security precautions. And I would allege, not being an American, it's a criminal offense because she has put lives at risk. Now, I've always said that the proper remedy for this is not to accuse Hillary Clinton of being a murderer or even a mass murderer, because you need a beyond reasonable doubt situation in a court of law with the jury. But juries and judges and prosecuting attorneys and defense attorneys are terrified by the black hand that operates in the shadows, where their nearest and dearest, or even themselves, can get on a plane and not come back. Because Michael Huerta's Federal Aviation Administration
Excuse me. I think you mispronounced his name, and as the administrator of the FAA, I think you should at least extend to him the courtesy as the senior beaner, BEANER, as the senior beaner in Obama's misadministration. I think you owe it to him and his lack of legacy to make sure you pronounce his name again. So I'll spell it and then you pronounce it. It's Huerta.
Michael Huerta.
Well, you're getting better, but I still need to keep my inflatable dummy around just in case. Over to you.
Okay, so the problem for these people is, whilst they believe they can communicate unintercepted, the matrix that has been laid down by British intelligence, not American intelligence, is embedded in a patent thicket of incredible depth and darkness, suitable metaphor is the black hand. That is to say, you can't see into this patent thicket who is behind it. We can, because we operate as a cloud-centric crime scene investigation. And of course, whoever's behind it, they are a human being. As I've said to some of my friends, you can divide the world up into many different categories. You could have lesbians and heterosexuals. You could have people who have bowel movements before or after breakfast.
Wait a
People who can
minute, wait a
sniff
minute. David, what about
Yes.
someone like Mensamax who might do it while he's having breakfast?
Well, you'll have to check with Mensa about that because I don't want to dig too deep into his personal habits.
Well, I guess I really don't either. So, sorry I mentioned that. And by the way, when I referred to Mensamax, I did not. It was not my intention to suggest that he was just some chopped liver and not to mention chorizo, which of course, if someone wanted to solve Benghazi, say like 2 years ago, all you need to do is Google um, Vaginagate, Vaginagate plus Hillary Clinton, or you could put in Benghazi plus chorizo plus Reggie Love plus Obama, and you'd probably come up with an 8 letter word that starts with C. David, over to you.
Yeah, that's right. While you were saying that, Field, it occurred to me that there are of the use of the onion router at these kind of crime scenes that we might just identify. One is because you have the ability to conceal the communications with your team involved in the hit, you can make sure that the cleanup crew is in position at or near the crime scene before the crime occurs. Now, in the case of 9525, that was a relatively isolated spot in the French Alps, as I understand, relatively near a ski resort. But the point is, I would argue that the coordinates for the point at which it would crash into the mountainside were selected quite possibly an hour or two before the crash. And the coordinates for the impact would have been uploaded via the Onion router into the autopilot as a waypoint. I think they call it, correct me if I'm wrong, a terminal waypoint or the last waypoint before the final approach. Do you have a special in word for that last waypoint, Field? Over to you.
How do you spell the waypoint? Or don't you know
Well,
it?
waypoint is waypoint. I'm talking about either a terminal or a final waypoint. Is there a term in pilotese? Over to you.
Yeah, it's called the destination.
Destination waypoint.
No, it's just called the destination. It is the final waypoint. And typically, like just to depersonalize this, yesterday when I left Frankfurt to Minneapolis, because I'm more familiar with that, I know what runway we landed on. The final waypoint in the flight plan of Delta Flight 11 yesterday, which let me stop right there and ask if anybody did flight monitoring of Flight 11 yesterday, you would know that it left uh, Gate 8 at Terminal 4 at Heathrow about 12 to 15 minutes early, and it arrived at Gate G8. But the final waypoint in the flight plan would have been R30L MSP, which is runway 30 left at MSP. It also, depending on SP, 30 left. But in the case of Germanwings 9525, would you like to know what the final waypoint was on the secondary flight plan that was put in by whoever controlled the BUAP? Yes or no?
Yes.
It would have been the latitude and longitude of the dam at Lac Sarah Pocon, and I will get that. I'll write that in the chat room because my French is by intention, my French is very poor. Is on a beeline to strike the dam, which would deny everyone up at the north end of the dam of fresh water and hydroelectric power, and it would wipe out communities and structures below the dam as Western Europe would be spilled intentionally by whoever, and notice for the record, I haven't said Dieter Uchtdorf and Obama, and never will I say Dieter Uchtdorf and Obama in relation to whoever targeted the BUAP. because if I were to say either Obama and or Dieter Uchtdorf or both of them, and then I were to scratch my head and wonder why they met in Utah, where somebody imputed a detonation of GW 9525 before it could drive a wedge between the French and German governments. So far be it from me to suggest that that could either be a German or a Indonesian named Barry Swatero, who is a cultist Muslim, because for me to get into Muslim and Mormon cults and who might ask the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot to destroy the dam, it would be terribly irresponsible of me to suggest it was probably Dieter Uchtdorf and Barry Swatero. Therefore, I will keep any thoughts regarding who targeted the Boeing uninterruptible autopilots to myself from this point forward. So help me God. David, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So I was just saying, with the onion router and the conspirators being able to communicate intercepted, mistaken confidence, fortunately, because Able Danger is now on the scene, they can prepare the location of the people who are going to find evidence near the crime scene so that those people are closer to the crime scene than legitimate first responders. And by organizing people like that, you can ensure that the first black box to be found relatively crushed, that you could remove the memory chip, which is quite extraordinary from a forensic point of view. And the second black box would have a convenient record of the parameters of the plane as it proceeded towards a mountainside that were consistent with the spin. Another asset that the criminal organization can have in place is the script for what is to be released to the media before the actual crash occurs. And I think we will find, Phil, that the terminology that they applied to Andreas Lubitz was in position a long time before the crash occurred. In German, I understand the term Der Amok Pilot that was published in the Bild Zeitung, which is a Javanese word apparently, where someone is a little bit moody and then they suddenly switch from being moody to picking up a knife or hopping into an aircraft and killing everyone in the area that they can. In the case of the Daily Mail, which was Hitler's favorite rag before World War II, owned by Lord Rothermere, whose great grandson or grandson is a great friend of Ship Jumper Dave. In the case of the Daily Mail, they described him as the killer pilot or the killer co-pilot. Now, if that man had still been alive, of course, he would be perfectly entitled to sue for libel. And unfortunately, because he's dead, it's left to organizations like Able Danger. In fact, I don't think there's any other organization but Able Danger that can restore that man's reputation. So that's very important, to have the script ready to go, because in the immediate aftermath of the crime or the crash, you want that script out there leaking into the media around the world through common feeds like Reuters or AFP. So millions of people around the world immediately in their minds have the word the killer pilot or Der Amok pilot associated with the crash. Because once you arrive with that kind of myth and you get it deep into the collective consciousness of the public, it's almost impossible to winkle out. So they've concluded the man is a ran amok and he's a congenital killer, when nothing in his past indicates that he had the slightest ill. The useful idiots have glommed onto that, thrown away anything of value that they got in tertiary education, did what Somerset Maugham suggested, engaged in the willing suspension of disbelief, and the poor clown is condemned as a cold-hearted killer. What else do? So they get the story ready, they get the files on all of the people in place. Now, isn't it interesting that the file on Hani Hanjour, the alleged pilot of the plane that hit the Pentagon, and the file on Andreas Lubitz, germane to the two crashes, would have been launched at the United States Visa Center, set up by Field System in 1994. And And it turns out that Lubitz and Hani Hanjour both did a significant amount of pilot training at flight schools in Arizona, and they were brought in on visas where a visa application would have had to have been made. I guess the Hani Hanjour one, the applications or several applications were made in Dubai, where of course Serco has a control tower, and Germany. In the case of Lubitz, I guess it was made in Germany. But the people working at the National Visa Center in the United States would have been Serco employees who would have begun to build a profile on Lubitz and Hani Hanjour on their first arrival, just as they did on Barry Spatero. Interesting thing about Barry Spatero's profile, it looks like it was highly modified, if you will, at a document conversion center set up by Base One Technologies in the Bronx in 2006, 2 years before his presidential campaign began. And Loretta Fuddy was the Department of Health Administrator or something like that in Hawaii, who apparently signed off on a fax copy of the long form birth certificate for Obama, which is manifestly a forgery. Has about, if I understand it correctly, 6 active image levels from document processing technology of the type that could be set up through the Onion router. So it's intriguing. If you look at the alleged long form birth certificate of Obama or the facsimile thereof, they're using technology that would be accessible to Base One Technologies, the protege company of Serco. So everything is connected, but just going back to 9525, I think the combination of profiles of individuals concerned, the spin in the story, and the location of the cleanup crews being in place prior to the crime scene is substantial circumstantial evidence of mens rea or the guilty mind. Now, the idea of having a snuff film, I believe you'll find, Phil, that there was a camera in the cockpit of that aircraft pointing out of the cockpit window at the target. And through the Onion router, that was played in real time to various world leaders who would need to be impressed and perhaps intimidated. And the threat would have been made that we have an option. We can crash this plane into the dam and cause a flood that's going to kill thousands of people, or we can crash the plane into the mountainside and accuse this poor man, Andreas Lubitz, of being what the English call a nutter. You take your choice. So world leaders become compromised. They're presented with a choice. It's a lose-lose choice, but they have to go through the least negatives in terms of their choice. And that might date back to when the United Kingdom government was forced to give Serco the right to produce a 4-minute warning of a nuclear attack.
Okay, and what year was that, David?
I think it was in the 50s or the 60s.
It was 1962. And what year did the song Telstar by the Tornadoes come out?
Oh, that was the same year, wasn't it?
Of course it was. I just want you to know that I'm listening to you with a critical ear. And one screw up and I'll be all over you like a mad dog. Over to you.
A rat up a drain pipe.
Yeah, like a rat up a drain pipe. That's what I meant to say when I said a mad dog. And notice for the record, I made no reference to Mary Elizabeth Harriman, her gay husband Beard, whatever his name was, Russell Svadka, Sovka. And if you have trouble, if you have difficulty, remember Russell Svadka's last name, just think of a Svadka martini, and immediately it'll come rushing back to you. And I was recently in a car listening to an album of music by Bread, and David, I wouldn't expect that you'd know who was the lead singer of Bread, but there's several people in Europe who might remember that David Gates was the lead singer in Bread, who did a variety of songs. I'm not going to list the one I like the most, but they did "Baby, I'ma Want You," "Baby, I'ma Need You," "You're the Only One," "I Care Enough to Blah Blah Blah." Baby, I'm a thinking. No, I'm not. I'm not thinking at all. I'm waiting for David to do some thinking, and I'll do some chatting. Over to you, David.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And that's just prompted me to think historically of this onion router technology, which has fallen into the hands of the operator of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the British company Serco. We have to remember that Serco, prior to being called Serco, was RCAGB 1929. RCA stands for Radio Corporation of America. And that at the time was run by a man called David Sarnoff. And David Sarnoff, back in 1912, was at the controls or in a management function of the New York-based Marconi telegraph system that was in communication with the equivalent in Canada, probably operated by William Stephenson, the man called Intrepid. And we must never forget the signal that was sent to the Titanic 20 minutes before it collided with the iceberg to change course, whereupon it hit the iceberg when, if it hadn't have changed course, of course, it would have avoided the iceberg. But there wouldn't have been such a high insurance payout brokered by Willis Faber, whom chairman I happen to know quite well, or ex-chairman. And Willis Faber, we mustn't forget, was the insurance broker that handled the double occurrence insurance fraud in the Twin Towers. So everything is connected. But just going back to RCAGB, RCAGB served the same purpose for organized crime groups as Serco today. That is to say, it was setting up what they would have called, or what we call now, a patent thicket for radio communications. And under the Crown rules, or Crown rights rules, the Crown has the right to practice any patent it issues. So if you can create a patent thicket where powerful companies like RCA or today RIM or Microsoft or Nokia are suing each other, whilst they're distracted, and the result can actually result in payments of billions of dollars, the Crown can use that technology for any purpose it wishes, including the murder of Andreas Lubitz and Loretta Fahy. Because make no mistake about it, folks, the Crown has an agent in your White House by the name of Barry Svitoro, who's a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies by virtue of his father being Kenyan, or his alleged father being Kenyan. So he should never have been allowed anywhere near the White House because he's not a natural-born American. And as I understand it, that means he has to have two American parents. In the case of the mother, she has to have been resident in the United States of America for 5 years after her 16th birthday. And in the case of the father, it has to be a natural-born American. The reason for that, as I understand it, is the founders were very anxious not to have divided loyalties in the President of the United States, which of course doesn't apply in the case of a state. And you have more than divided loyalties in the White House as far as the United States is concerned. You have a traitor. Obama is a traitor and he's a spy.
Hey, David,
Go ahead.
traitor to whom?
Well, of course, yes, you're right. He's not a traitor because he's actually, I believe, an unlawful belligerent is the correct word.
Yeah, he's a coward and he is a illegal combatant because he doesn't wear a uniform or declare what nation he's representing. And I just want to shove this right up where it doesn't seem so pleasant. But when I wore this, anybody anywhere in the world knew who was coming because that Eagle Globe and Anchor identifies anyone wearing it as a United States Marine. And United States Marines have a unique opportunity, and that is a president who's a qualified president as opposed to the garbage that's squatting at 1600. A legitimate president can send the Marines into foreign soil anytime that president wants to, and he doesn't need to talk to Congress or the Senate, and he doesn't have to declare war. He just has to unleash the mad dogs, and the mad dogs will go over and make short work of whoever stands between them and their objective. That's why the Mad Dogs of the Marine Corps were sent over there in 1802 when a bunch of Muslims were creating problems on the shores of Tripoli, hence our theme song, From the Halls of Montezuma to the Shores of Tripoli. So Obama cannot be charged with treason because he never took an oath. So listen to this carefully. This is the only important thing I'll say this calendar day, which is the 17th of April of 2015. Obama cannot be charged with treason because he's never taken an oath to the United States of America. According to a man in a black robe named Judge Roberts, on the 20th of January of 2009, he flubbed it in public. So Johnny Boy gave it to him. I don't know what I mean by that, but Johnny Boy gave it to him in private behind closed doors. Baby makes me proud, Lord, don't she make me proud. She never makes a scene by crawling all over me in a crowd. That was Charlie Rich, but he did take an oath to the United States, 1935 to 37, and when he was in education, every day he would hold up his right hand and say, I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and for the flag to which it stands, one nation, under God, blah, blah, blah. And we don't say that anymore. And some people don't even take off their hat or put their hand over their heart when they do. So the United States of America has been under attack for a long, long time. And we've been on defense for, are going to have the ass of Obama and his administration, not for treason on his part. By the way, David, do you remember that September of 2013, you and I sent treason charges against Obama to about 10 Congress critters? Well, I still have that file, and I'm going to file it this month because I think that Agent Glow is not with us. I think she checked out an hour ago to go do something outdoors. And Agent Freeport Girl may or may not be with us. I haven't checked. But now that I'm back from Europe, my next big project is sending my letter to the IRS saying that Christine Marcy, IRS, to try to get me to stop claiming that Obama is guilty of 2,200 plus cases of wrongful death, which he can be held accountable, and he will be held accountable. That's my opinion, because he is not a lawful commander in chief, and during his masquerade. And the other oath he didn't take, of course, was on January of 2013 was a Sunday. So by law, the oath is given on the 20th of January. And then when they had the inauguration the day after, there's got to be a morning after. Notice I haven't sung Jennifer Warnes, There's the Right Time of the Night, as if there's a wrong time of the night. So we have a real mess here in the United States of America. And why is that significant? Here comes the what is that word? Jingoistic nationalism. America can get that done, then everyone else is going to complete the transition to a police state. And if you want to see what a police state looks like, just drive around any part of the United Kingdom right now. I hear a funny noise. I don't know what it is, but it's coming from you, David.
That's my dog tiptoeing on the wooden floor.
Oh, okay. Tiptoe through the tulips. Anyway, what I was saying was, to summarize, Obama States of America. Therefore, it's my obligation as Field McConnell, U.S. citizen, Christian Punahou 67 and Naval Academy 71, to identify to the Department of Justice that Christine Marcy and Barry Spatero, Punahou 79, are intending to injure me by weaponizing the IRS. And I will break the hands of anybody that tries to put their hands around my throat. David, over to you.
Yeah, just one thing. I believe an unlawful belligerent, the appropriate remedy is a military tribunal and a firing squad. And there is a little hiccup there because your sister is a member of the Bar Association of the United States Court of Military Appeals. Now, how much power she has there, I don't know. But let me just leave with this, Field. the United States Navy Command Center initiation platform for onion router messages intended to protect the United States in the event of an attack of the type of 911. And of course, that was vaporized on 911. So let me just leave this message perhaps for military people or former military people in the United States government. Wouldn't it be fascinating if the initiation machine at the United States Navy Command Center in the Pentagon was transferred on impact to the Chappaqua server in Westchester County in the home of Hillary and Bill Clinton? And I'll bet it was. Anyway, over to you, Phil. It's time is nigh.
Oh, okay. Well, time is nigh. Then that reminds me of a song by the Outsiders in 1966 that would make a dog bark even if he is reluctant to bark otherwise. It goes, I can't wait forever, even though you want me to. I can't wait. Let me. Oh, no. Okay, no, nobody would remember the lead singer of that group, the Outsiders from Cleveland, Ohio, was Sonny Girassi. But if you want to Google it, you'll find out I'm right. Sonny Girassi, lead singer for the Outsiders. And David, your dog is barking, so why don't we take a look at some photos? There's Agent, I'm looking at Doug McNichol on the left and Vanishing Point behind him. And in the mirror is Joyce taking the picture. You might look above the flowers, you'll see a mirror, and directly above the flowers in the mirror is the person with the camera taking the picture. On the right side, from back to front, is Agent. I thought it was nicer to sit on the side with the ladies than to sit on the side with the guys, so that's why I sat there. Anyway, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Barrage Sierra Poncon. We're looking at a dam, and initially someone said that they didn't think an A320 could knock that dam down, and you're probably right. But according to Bob S., and notice for the record, I didn't say he lives in Texas, nor that he would be attending our event from the 7th to the 14th at the ranch if we get the ranch, and I think we're gonna. So Bob S. says, yes, look, dark skinned. That they're talking about the swimmer in the water when Loretta Fuddy went down to her death. Meanwhile, if Mensa's still here, and I think he is, there's David H's, could put up a red button so that as soon as I see the red button and the protocol adequate, like push it good, or push it real good, then I will be certain to do so because I'm tired anyway, and I can go home and continue doing my 1,000+ emails that I'm behind. Field, have your piano wire handy. Let's see who did that. Piano wire. Maranatha, okay, piano. She's a piano Sherlock, liverish peasant, and Texas Mav, and Afterburner, and Linda M. And notice for the fact that I didn't say M stands for Michigan. So we're looking for a big red button. I promise to do my best for God, the country, and Queen to help other people every day, especially those at home. Brownie motto. Ah, Gee, it's nice to know my mind still works in the motto, and it's, could be grotto. There's the big red button. Now what we need to have is we need a 3, 2, 1, push it. And David, do you have any final words before someone tells me to push it?
Now, in the interest of being absolutely accurate, that's not my dog, but it's the same breed and he looks the same. Over to you.
Oh, okay. That reminds me of Inspector Clouseau when some hobo comes up and says, no, actually,